right, here we are on filmsgonewild.com. My name is John Wildman, and this is a short segment from the Lake Travis Film Festival. And we should have five films represented here eventually. Right now, I think we have four films represented, but we're going to get started because we got lots to talk about because we got all these films we want to talk about. So to start it off, I'm going to have each one of you introduce yourself and your films and tell the audience, because they've not seen your films yet, tell the audience what your film is about. So Malibu, let's start with you. Uh-oh.
Gotta unmute myself. There we go.
There you go.
So, I'm Malibu Taetz, and I'm the writer and director of The Substitute. And it's about this substitute teacher who starts to notice some very strange things about her classroom, and particularly about the teacher that she's subbing with. And yeah, that's kind of all I'll say for now.
If you're at all familiar with Indiana Jones, you should be in good shape watching The Substitute. Okay. Duncan, let's go with you.
Hi, I'm Duncan Putney. I'm the writer-director of Macy's Goes to War, and it is a short satire, about 5 minutes, and it's like a black and white newsreel send up from 1942, and it tells the story of Mr. Macy of Mr. Macy's department stores' vital contribution of the rubber parade balloons to the war effort.
Okay, and really quickly before we get to Laura and Chris, David, why don't you introduce yourself? I know we've already heard what The Substitute is about, but please introduce yourself and tell us what you did on the film.
David Mora Perea. I was the producer of The Substitute, and I think people should watch the film because we shot, edited, recorded music, mixed it, did everything in just 8 days.
In 8 days. In all that time, you're the guy who had to say no to Malibu.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, Laura, you're up.
Hi, I'm Laura Galt. I am the director and producer on The Reunion, and it is about a man who returns to his class reunion to find out some truths about his past that may or may not have some effect on his present situation.
All right, and finally we have Chris. Chris, you're up.
Hi, I'm Chris Graham, writer and director of AIDA. AIDA is it's about a young mother who's the day in the life of a young mother, and as she sort of struggles with connecting with her loved ones. Yeah, it's hard to explain without giving too much away, but
exactly.
Yeah.
And I was describing the AIDA to someone today, and I said what's wonderful about it is that you don't give a lot away, and you go, you know something, figure the shit out. It's, watch the film and figure it out. Don't and I appreciate that so much.
Thank you.
And frankly, Laura, you're also in that same boat where we watch characters on screen, and if we watch too many, although TV drama is really good now, if you watch too much that's formatted in that way, it's driven into us. Here's this turning point. Here's this fact. Here's this, and very rarely are we as an audience trusted to connect those dots. So congratulations for both of you on that front. And then we've got the boys just having fun. The Substitute and Macy's. This is just a silliness and stuff going on. But before we get to them, Melissa, I think, has just joined us. Melissa, can you hear us?
I can. Everybody's you're sideways. I don't know why. Like,
all right. When we're talking to you, we'll go this way. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So Melissa, introduce yourself and tell us about your film.
So my name is Melissa Kirkendall, and I'm the director and producer of You Are Me and I Am You. And it's a documentary short about an indigenous activist, midwife, and healer in Ecuador. It came out of footage that I was shooting for a feature. And then when COVID happened, I realized, I couldn't film for a long time. So we had already shot 40 hours. So we decided to see if we could make a short. So that's what we've done, and I think it came out pretty well. So that's it.
I love this film. I think it came out wonderfully, and boy, I could not wait to introduce it to folks, because I was cheerleading those women all throughout this film, and getting indignant on their behalf. So congrats. It's really good. All right. Again, now I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to weigh in on this. And this is something that I love hearing each filmmaker who has made a short film discuss this from their viewpoint. And I always say this half kiddingly, and only half, but why the hell did you make a short film? Because you're not making money on this thing. And, and any film, regardless of length, there's so much pain in the assery that's involved in getting the money to make it, taking the time to make it, going through the editing process, and you're doing it on behalf of a short subject. So so there's got to be a reason. Either you had to get that film out of your belly, or it's got grander ambitions beyond the short. But I want to hear each one of you talk about that. And so, Laura, let's start with you and the reunion. Why did you make a short film? Why the reunion?
Well, I think one of the reasons I made a short film is I just think it's important to tell relevant messages, and just to create stories, to tell stories about people and to make people think. And the reunion is based partially on a true story. But then also I am, I'm multi-hyphenate. So one of the things that I am is I'm a speech language pathologist. My mother was a special education teacher. So I've grown up in the world where I work with people who have disabilities. And in this film, we do have a wheelchair user. So for me, representation matters. And then it was also a film too that I feel like we could really have an inclusive cast. So it's just a story, and there are just like so many talking points about decisions that you make that may affect your future that you don't necessarily think about when you make them. But then, how do those decisions that we've made in the past, how do they affect our future? And then are we happy about those decisions we make, or do we have regret about those decisions? So hopefully when the audience sees the reunion, they'll kind of maybe think about those things.
Okay. All right. And Malibu and David, let's talk about The Substitute. All right. One, now you've got the writer-director perspective, and then you've got a producer perspective of doing this short film. So again, let's start off with Malibu here. Tell us what was going on with you that you had to make this movie. Oh, can't hear you again.
Here we go. Yeah, there's kind of two sides to that. As you were talking and Laura was talking, that I was thinking, like, why make a short film at all when there's not as big of a market for it, sadly. And then why this film particularly. And for short films, I think I just love them. I really love watching them, and I think there's so much you can get across in just a really by limiting yourself to that. There's so much that can get across, and I think that we can see them evolving into something being accepted as an art form in itself, not just a mini feature, but as its own form of expression, of artistic expression. And I think that I can see that trajectory going with short films in general. So I'd love to keep making them, as well as to make a feature someday would be great. But with this film, The Substitute in particular, I think I was inspired by it's kind of a movie about teachers, honestly, where it's oftentimes you see movies set in schools told from the student's perspective, but I wanted to set it from the teacher's perspective. And also inspired by some teachers that I had growing up who were really passionate about the things they were teaching, and the people that they were teaching to. And yet, because of their not really outgoing personalities or quiet, they were sort of quieter people, some of these, that they never really got recognized for it or the credit for it. So I wanted to tell a story about one of those people, but I also wanted to have as much fun as I could with it and make it into a grand, explosive adventure film, but keep that character so that they don't have to evolve into the guns blazing kind of hero that the person they're subbing for is in this case, but they are the hero because they stick to that passionate, unique, curious sort of personality that they began the film with. So that was for me.
David, I have no idea how you reined that guy in. Jesus. Okay.
Yeah, it was difficult at times. I think for me as a filmmaker as well, I try to direct short films as well. I mean, it's cheaper to make a short film than to make a feature. But on the other side and the flip side, I think they're the same medium, but they're different art forms. I think like it takes different sort of skills to be able to tell a story in 8 minutes or 12 minutes and 14 minutes than in 2 hours. And I think there are stories that don't need 2 hours. They just need those 6 or 8 minutes. And it's a challenge, an opportunity to create different worlds or different perspectives in a smaller amount of time. Short films are so playful that you can risk a lot and try new things and explore things without having to worry too much about the consequences of ruining a 2-hour movie or an hour and a half feature. And yeah, it's an opportunity to try new things out.
Now, Duncan, from our emailing back and forth, it seems like you are never not on a set. So, so why do this short?
Well, one reason was this script I wrote as a writer, it came out of a dream. I was at Thanksgiving. It was too much turkey, tryptophan, and red wine or whatever it was. Anyway, I woke up I just dreamed the entire thing, start to finish, in black and white as a newsreel. And a newsreel is a short subject.
Yeah.
So I did it. But the reason I like shorts is I think it makes you a better writer for longer subjects, because in a short, you really have to pay attention to every detail. The visuals have to do so much heavy lifting to get all that information in there, which I think really helps with when you're writing in a much longer form. And I break up filmmaking into 2 parts. There's the me-I part, which is the writing. And then, but once it gets to production, it's we and our. It is a total team sport. And I said, no one person takes credit for that. If it wasn't for a great editor, a great DP, a great artist that did all of our animation work, it never would have worked. And it just never would have happened. I was very lucky.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the one thing that I'll tell you as a filmmaker, I think everybody can agree, if anybody who's done a comedy, especially as a short, that when you start going to that nitty gritty of going, we need 12 minutes instead of 15 minutes, and we need to cut some jokes that we just absolutely love, but we really want to get down that time. That really just teaches you, how to kill darlings and how to really find out quickly what's really important. Because man, short films, there's nothing that's more harsher on us as far as our genius words that we've created and things in our scripts to go, I guess we can do without that. I guess we can. And man, I envy anybody, that's made a short, fewer than 30 minutes, because the ego is just really hard to deal with. Speaking for myself, Chris. Let's go to you now on AIDA and why make this movie?
Yeah, kind of what you were saying is I had only made features prior to this, and I saw it as more practical, waste. I was sort of a way to put my time and energy, and I was actually living in Japan for a couple of years, and just getting really, I think as creatives, there's a finite amount of time that you can not be creative before you're going to explode. And I was like, okay, I don't have the resources and the time to make a feature right now. But I've always been curious in making a short, about making a short, just to see how it would work, how I could do it. And it was, as you were saying, it's way more challenging than I would imagine. I actually feel a lot more freedom in a feature. I feel like I don't have to kill as many darlings, and I don't feel like I have to button up everything so nicely. There's a lot more room to breathe and move within a feature. So part of it was a challenge. Another part was I was just jumping out of my skin to create something. And then I would say another part is I had this amazing backdrop of Tokyo, which I didn't know if I would ever have again. And I also had a really good contact with a great actress, and she was anxious to do something a little different than her normal roles that she does. She's on more like a Disney Channel show and in Tokyo. So she was sort of anxious to do a more like grown-up role. And so I had all these great elements, and it would have been just foolish to not write something. So I wrote something that was I was able to do within a low budget and a small crew. And I found it very gratifying, but also very, very challenging. And as you say, I tip my hat to anybody who's made a short under 30 minutes, because it's really hard to make a good short. I found anyway.
All right. Okay. Melissa, we're going to go to you next. And this is going to be a question, again, that everybody is going to go through. But since we already know from your intro why you made your film, or how it came together, we're going to go right into the next question for you, is to lead off. And that is this. Every filmmaker, I haven't met one yet, who hasn't had that moment where they've gone, why the hell did I decide to do this or try to do this with my life? What was I thinking? And there's usually a film that all of us can go back to and watch and go, oh, that's what it was. Yes, okay, all right. I guess I'll try it again. I guess I'll make another one. And it's not like our favorite film, but for filmmakers, there's usually a film that really kickstarted us into going, this is what I want to do. So Melissa, what would that film be for you?
Are you asking me like what my influences are specifically?
I'm asking you which film kicked you off into doing what you're doing.
Ooh, you know what? For me, when it comes to documentary film, which I also do scripted. So my documentary, I call it my bad habit, because like documentaries are not known to be profitable, and they consume a lot of time. Even a short film, if it's not a labor of love, I don't know why the hell you're doing it, as a documentary filmmaker, because it's, not everybody's going to be the next Ken Burns. I mean, of course, everybody hopes to be, but like that's not the norm, especially in the documentary world. So for me, when I trace back that interest, which is what's relevant to this short because it's a documentary, it's 60 Minutes. Like that, I grew up, my dad loved 60 Minutes, and that was something that I used to get to do with my dad on Sundays. I hated it when I was a kid. I was like, God, like, really, you want to hang out and watch 60 Minutes? But because I grew up with that, as I became older, that's now still to this day my favorite news program. And I still, the difference is like, I personally like when I do documentary work, which I've actually done, the short is my first short, but I actually did a feature that was released in 2012. And then I was a producer on an ESPN 30 for 30 doc. So like I have a little bit of documentary experience, and I've done some work on some other documentaries. But my favorite way of telling the story through the documentary platform is to never hear the interviewer. I want to hear the whole story and that was something I had to learn later. And it's an interesting question. I can't say that I know where that resonated with me at some point. I don't know. I mean, Hands on a Hard Body is one of my favorites. Fog of War, both of those are told, you don't really hear the narrator or the interviewer. And so that's kind of what I subscribe to. It's one of the hardest ways to make a documentary, because that means you have to really, really like make sure that you get all those bites. And then when you're editing, it can be extremely challenging to figure out how to put those together.
Right.
In terms of filmmaking in general, I don't know. I mean, I think I got interested in film when I was a kid watching Alfred Hitchcock, you know, like that was probably the first part of me that really was like, wow, this is really cool. But I didn't see myself as a filmmaker until I was well into my 30s, actually, late 20s, early 30s. I was in the music business before this. So like I was doing that and was always interested in film, but I didn't think of film as a real thing, which I know sounds really ironic that music was. Like,
Right.
and I thought that film was the bigger dream. And now that I'm in film, I actually realize it's almost reversed, but that's just not the experience I had. But yeah, I think, you know, as a kid, when I finally got into 60 Minutes, I realized, man, it was just great. And maybe in terms of the short format, and I never really maybe connected this until just now, but what I always loved about 60 Minutes was that I could learn a whole lot about something in a short period of time in a very interesting way. It wasn't told like the morning news, you know, that could be super boring or super hyped up. It was just this, it was 60 Minutes to me is a very condensed version of documentary filmmaking on a weekly basis. And I'm still impressed by that program to this day, so.
Okay, let's go to Laura. Laura, what's your film?
So I'm not sure I really have a specific film that got me interested in filmmaking. I have been acting since a young age, and but it really wasn't. So I've been acting, I've been on sets. So, you know, just kind of being in that creative world has just always been exciting for me. But again, I'm kind of a second actor. So it really wasn't until I was in my 40s that I was on set and started to produce, but just on set as an actor. And then it was like, you know what, like just seeing all the things that maybe should have been done, and like how I would have preferred to have been directed. And just, you know, so I just kind of had all these ideas popping in my mind. And I have some other female directors who are also starting to do filmmaking in their 40s. And so they were inspiring to me. And I just decided, you know what, I'm going to do it. So it's really just kind of have my experience as an actor and just wanting to contribute as a director and a producer.
Okay. All right, guys. For you guys, I'm going to actually change this up now. Now I don't want to hear about your influences. What I want now is the film that you've had an incredibly hard day of shooting, or you've come home after a shoot. It's the film that you reward yourself with. What is the movie that you turn on? Let's Chris, let's start with you.
That is, oh man, that's a tough question. So to decompress, something I it'd probably be something funny. Let me think. What do I go back to, or I can just turn on and I'm, no matter where it's at, I'm diving in. I'm drawing a blank. There's certainly plenty where I'll just, I would say something like, if I wanted comfort food, it would be something from the 80s from Spielberg or something. That's my comfort food. I wake up on Saturday morning, I walk out. If Goonies is playing and it only has 10 minutes left, I'm watching it. I know he just produced that, but if it's any, of course, Indiana Jones, Empire of the Sun, anything, I'm watching it. So that's definitely my macaroni and cheese is Spielberg.
Okay, all right. You've made Malibu very happy with the Spielberg call out. So let's go to Malibu now. All right, what's the film you reward yourself with?
I'm gonna learn that one day, how the mute button works. Totally, definitely like the Spielberg stuff I love as well. But I think the one that I most oftenly would turn to would be Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, actually. And that's one that just really, if I get depressed about what I'm doing or like what why am I making movies? I will go to that one. And I saw it later in life. Like I didn't see it, I didn't grow up with it, but it's like the characters fail at everything they try to do in that movie. And it's very sad kind of where they are, and they end without a happy ending but with a hopeful ending. And somehow it's a comedy, but somehow it's so realistic feeling, and somehow it's so real and not depressing at the very end. And it's when I saw that, I'm like, if I can one day make a movie that is making someone else feel the way that I'm feeling right now after I've finished seeing this movie, I totally would love to do that. So for me, it's Modern Times by Charlie Chaplin.
I was a publicist at Lincoln Center for a while, and we had Modern Times playing on a constant loop in the amphitheater screening at the Eleanor Boone Monroe Film Center, and I'd find myself transfixed watching it because it was the assembly line segment
Yes.
of the film, and I would find myself just drawn to it like a moth to flame, just watching that one segment over and over and over again. I totally picture that. Okay, David. All right, what's your reward?
Yeah, I fucking go home and get some snacks and sit on the couch and play a movie and be by myself and not be distracted. And probably Casablanca.
Wow, look at you, classic boys. Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, nice. All right.
I loved it. I loved the dialogue. Yeah.
Okay, from Modern Times to Casablanca. Okay, Duncan, what do you got?
For me, it's the classic films of the '30s with all the great character actors, Reginald Owen, Ronald Colman. You know, all those guys. I just loved it because I'm just over 60, so my TV afternoon movies when I was growing up were all those great movies. And now I go back and looked at them, and I appreciate the art of movie making, where before I was just entertained, and I still am entertained.
Yeah.
Those are just great films.
I find myself going like in classic film rabbit holes. Like recently, it was like I went to a deep dive of Ginger Rogers movies and really focusing on her performances. In these films, not just obviously not just the Fred Astaire movies, but the other films that she had as well. And I'll do that like with an individual performer or director, and find myself doing it. So I totally understand that. Well, listen, again, let me run through the roster. We've been talking with Christopher Graham, who directed AIDA, Duncan Putney with Macy's Goes to War, Malibu, and Dave from The Substitute, Laura Galt from The Reunion, and Melissa Kirkendall from You Are Me and I Am You. All of these awesome films were screening at the Lake Travis Film Festival, and it's been great talking movies with all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for hosting this, John.
Thanks
for having us.